And you went to the high also, right?
Yeah, I went to Boys High.
Boys High. What year did you graduate?
1967.
All right.
You familiar with my career at Alexander Hamilton High School?
I know you were city champion, yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, when I went to Hamilton, we were in the B division.
Okay.
Moved to the A division.
Mm-hmm.
And the Boys High colors are red, black, and white.
Yes, indeed.
And that became the Hamilton's colors. When I was there, I changed the colors to Boys High.
There you go. You got to take your colors with you.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to WBH Radio. I am your host, William Holly. Thank you for tuning in. Every so often, we have the privilege of having a legend sit with us, and today is one of those days. Our next guest is the executive director of the Public Schools Athletic League, affectionately called the PSAL, the one and only Mr. Ray Haskins. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Oh, just happy to be here.
We are honored and privileged to have you. I mentioned that you are the executive director of the PSAL, but you put in a lot more work than that in this city. You coached LIU Blackbirds basketball, took them to the NCAA tournament, and you were also a head coach, PSAL champion at Alexander Hamilton High School. And I want to point out that you also finished your career in education as a principal in this great city.
Yes, I did. And it's because of all the things I've done prior to this is why I'm at the helm of the PSAL now. So it was a position I didn't seek.
Right.
The position sought me, and the time and the timing, everything was right. So I'm on a mission to try to bring the PSAL back to the levels of past glory.
Of past glory. How long have you been the executive director?
July the 11th was my first day on the job.
July 11, 2022?
Yes.
How were you approached with this opportunity? As you said, the job came your way. How did it come about?
Well, I was asked to make several recommendations about several names were presented to me by a search committee. And I made my recommendations on various candidates. And then one of the people on the committee said, "Coach, what about you?" And, of course, I said, well, I wouldn't feel comfortable if I pushed myself and you asked me about all these great people
Right.
to recommend them, so I wouldn't seek it. She says, "Yeah, but what about you, Coach? I think you would be a great fit." So everything started to move forward from there. And I made that my application, and a lot of people on the committee knew nothing about me, nothing about my background.
Right.
But it was almost a perfect fit because I was an educator. I was a community person, a community coach. I've been a referee for over 50 years. I taught officiating class for 20 years. A lot of guys who are officiating now came from my class. I was an athletic director. I was a Division III basketball coach, Division II basketball coach, Division I basketball coach.
All three levels of NCAA.
And I was blessed to go to Nigeria and help with the Nigerian Coaches Association. I spent 6 weeks in Nigeria.
When was this?
This was 1983. And a strange thing happened. God gives me great stories to tell. While I was over in Nigeria, we were at Ahmadu Bello University. That's in Kano State. And we had the basketball going, and it was a big soccer tournament.
Yes.
So we had an American coach over there that lives there by the name of Oliver Johnson. He's from Milwaukee. He said, "Coach, is this kid over here? I just see how he can walk, how he moves. I think he could be a great basketball player." So we walked on the soccer field, and then he said, "Come here, young man." And guy came over humbly. He said, "You know something? I got a sport that you could really play. This would be perfect for you." And he said, the guy said, "Well, I love soccer. I love what I'm doing." He said, "Yeah, but I guarantee you, if you come over here just for 15 minutes, we could tweak your interest in basketball.
Wow.
And guess who that individual was?
Who was it, Mr. Haskins?
Akeem Olajuwon.
Wow.
I had nothing to do with it. I just happened to be there and witness it. And I tell people that's why Akeem is so pure. He was about 15, 16 years old. That's why he's so pure in his basic fundamentals.
Yeah.
You see, all his moves, if you really look at them, they camp moves. The moves that kids used to go to camp.
Yes.
They developed the up and under, the reverse pivot,
Right.
all that basic movements. He learned it. He didn't mess around. So he was in a hurry to learn. Very highly intelligent young man, and he became a master.
He sure did. It's funny you say he's like a camp kid. He was kind of late in the game in basketball, so he was just taking the direction in his purest form and applying it. And the result of that was a Hall of Fame career.
That's right. Another part of his story is he was recruited by St. John's University.
Wow.
Coach Conaseca recruited him. So he flew to New York. He came from a very wealthy family in Nigeria.
Wow.
He flew to New York, didn't have a coat on, came into Kennedy Airport, got off the plane, saw how cold it was, went to the reception desk and said, "Listen, I'm in the wrong place. Direct me somewhere where it's hot all the time."
Wow.
And that's how he got down to Houston, Texas. And he went to the University of Houston. They didn't recruit him. He just showed up.
That's how those things happen, man. Something as simple as the weather, right, can change the trajectory of history.
That's right.
Mr. Haskins, you mentioned that you took over as the executive director earlier this year. Prior to that, you were retired from coaching?
Yes. What I was doing was a thing called F status. As a principal, I was mentoring other educators. I was mentoring principals, assistant principals, teachers in the Brownville section of Brooklyn. So I retired, but I wasn't retired because I went to work. I did things every day. I was all over, I had great friendships, along the way because as a coach, I didn't have a JV. I had a lot of kids under my tutelage. At Alexander Hamilton, I had 24, 25 kids on the team. Didn't have a JV. And I always asked my kids to commit to the program. Give us your best. All right? If you give your best, now I'll give my best.
Yes.
So, I had kids, Carrie Scurry, 6'9", Ice Reynolds, Peter Washington, Andre Urban, Gerald Green, that coaches were going to come. D1 coaches were going to come.
Right.
But that's not the key to the program. The key is what happens to the other young men on your team and your program.
Indeed.
So New York has kind of like a bad national reputation in the public schools, and that's why a lot of people don't come up and say, our kids don't have the necessary requirements in order to receive scholarships. So I did the camp work. Camp work was the hardest work I ever did in my life.
You would work as a basketball counselor as a camp?
Counselor, coach,
Right.
at camps. So, but while I was there, I was able to meet other coaches, Division II, Division III coaches. I met them and had relationships with them, and they saw my work ethic. So now when I picked the phone up and said, I got a kid by the name of Mike Urban or Wendell Saunders, I even placed my managers into scholarship positions to go and work at those programs. So now those kids were able to go to school also.
Mr. Haskins, you talking about putting in the work as a coach for all of your kids.
That's right.
And today a lot of these coaches, they like to talk about the 3 or 4 kids they put in the Division I. But you've been a coach for 10 years. You done coached 999 kids, and you only want to talk about the 3 or 4 that went to school. They don't want to talk about the others that's sitting on the end of their bench, but they are responsible to those individuals as well.
And that's right. And one of the things, because of my travel and what I did, it went out to the community, went out to the kids in the community. one of the coaches says, well, I'm envious of that Ray Haskins. And the kid said, well, why would you be, Coach? He says, man, every kid loves him, even if they didn't play for him, because they heard the stories. They have our kids are friends of friends.
Yes.
And that was one of the great things about basketball and sports in New York City. Coming up, if you live in the projects, let's say you live in projects, Albany projects, you knew kids in the projects in the Bronx, projects in Far Rockaway, projects in Queens. Why? Because Housing Authority had tournaments and brought those kids into competition. And you know how athletes, they just gather together. I tell people, I'm a member of a fraternity. I'm Omega Psi Phi. One of the greatest fraternities in the world. I'm very proud of my membership. One of the best things I ever did. But the greatest fraternity I ever been associated with was basketball, Phi basketball.
There you go.
It's just when guys find out, no matter where you are, that you involved in basketball, it just gravitate towards you, and it's just a certain kinship, man. Just fellowship, right off the top.
Without question, Mr. Haskins. And you mentioned New York City kind of has a bad reputation right now, and that may be due to the quality of leadership kind of deteriorating. How did that happen?
Well, it's a combination of things. The biggest culprit is NCAA, because of what they did. Now, I don't have anything against AAU coaches. It's a purpose for them, but they disrupt the equation of the partnership between community coaches and the high school coaches when the NCAA legislated live periods out of the season. So now coaches don't come during the basketball season to see kids play. They go on the AAU circuit and they see everybody. They don't have to go in high schools now.
Right.
See, so you have that.
So what do you believe that kind of cut the legs out of the high school coach?
Yeah, they don't have those kind of relationships. This relationship I had a relationship with John Thompson, bless his soul.
Big John.
Great guy. Let me show you how deep my relationship went.
John Thompson, former Georgetown coach, first black man to win an NCAA championship.
Yeah, well, he didn't like to hear it that way. He was a coach that happened to be black that won the NCAA championship.
Amen.
So, in my relationship with him, we used to talk. I always played the pressure defense, and he liked my pressure defense. If you look at his career, when he was coaching Georgetown, once he started putting that press in, because we talked about the press all the time, his program went to a different level. He was not a pressure coach, but he saw my Alexander Hamilton teams play. When he was recruiting Nate Sims, one of my players who went to Ohio State, Lionel King, who went to Cleveland State, he was recruiting those kids, and he liked how we played. So we used to talk about it all the time. I didn't teach in the press, but I know I added something to it. So I'm going with this story was I have 6 daughters. One of my daughters was exceptionally bright. She went to Brooklyn Tech, graduated from Brooklyn Tech at the age of 16.
Wow.
Sat out a year, and she wanted to go to Georgetown. She applied to Georgetown, and she was rejected. I said, how could they reject you? You got a 4.0 grade point average. They said, well, I didn't do enough community this, community that. So I went to the Final Four. I wasn't going to go, but I went to the Final Four in San Antonio, Texas. And I stayed in the same hotel with John. I saw him in the lobby. He came through. He said, hey, Ray, what's going on? I said, Coach, how you feel? What's going on? I said, I need your help. He said, you need my help? I said, yeah. He says, what's going on? I said, my daughter applied to Georgetown School of Business, and she was rejected. And he told me, he says, oh, man, what a coincidence. He said, 2 weeks ago, Michael Jordan called me and asked me if I could get one of his friends in. And I couldn't. I looked at him, so I put my hand on his shoulder. I said, yeah, John, Michael asked you, but he didn't teach you to press. I did. Oh. My daughter went to Georgetown.
There you go.
Scholarship. He even got a job there, and people wanted to know who she was. That Coach Thompson would call over to the part where she was working at. He called her, who are you? That Coach Thompson never calls over here. He never. Right. So, and that's my story about Georgetown, John Thompson, and
Ray Haskins.
Basketball.
Ray Haskins, these are amazing relationships, and it's a product of you doing the work, not just during the high school season, but as you mentioned, going out in the summer camps, forging these relationships. I'm not quite sure today's PSAL coach has these relationships or this work ethic or understands that dynamic and how valuable it can be to your program overall. How fair an assessment is that?
That's a great assessment. I don't think they know how important it is to have a total program. You can't coach a sport, not just New York City, anywhere, and not be totally accessible to your players, to your student athletes. Mm-hmm. And you have to be more than a coach because you become a resource to the students on your team.
For sure.
You ask their parents, you develop a partnership with the child and the parent. And it's important that you have that partnership, you have that relationship with parents. So your play athletes, they don't play one against the other.
Right.
We talk, we communicate. So it has to be a total program. When you got a total program, kids see that, and it means something to them.
It means something to them. Mention total program. And Mr. Haskins, I got you, Executive Director of the PSAL. There's something that I see with the PSAL that I have an issue with. I want to know how aware you guys are and what you think of it. To coach in the PSAL, there are certain qualifications. A college degree. And in some of these schools, they'll throw a random teacher from the school on the roster. They'll get Ms. Delgado from the Spanish department, and her name will be there. But when you get to the game, you see some other individual coaching who may have just walked in off the street. They're really the one running the program. And I have an issue with that because that coach is taking a shortcut. That coach has concessions being made for them, right? Furthermore, that coach didn't meet the standard that's required, whether it's going to school, different things. I mentioned you're a principal. That person is not going through PD. That person is not going through the character development away from the basketball court. And I think that has an impact on the kids. You got the blind leading the blind. What do you think of that practice? First off, how aware is the PSAL of that practice? I'm sure you are.
We're very aware, but it's a contractual thing. And this is what happens. And this is why you may have more grounded coaches in the Catholic schools and the private schools. I remember when I first started coaching, the coach of Talent Time was a Tasty Bread salesman.
Okay.
All right. Coach Bob Oliva, who had all those great teams at Christ the King, he didn't even have a high school diploma. But those schools took in those individuals because why? Because they had a propensity, they had a talent for sports or basketball. They could teach it. At one time in this city, I worked at Alexander Hamilton. I worked at Automotive High School. Those were trade high schools. Yeah. Those high schools, you could have a high school diploma. If you were a mechanic, you could become a teacher. You could teach at those schools, a regular licensed teacher. You could electrician. You could teach at Transit Tech or Alexander Hamilton. So that was the difference. Here you got guys, not degrees, but they're specialties.
Right.
And we all know about the, educators. We know about the great debate, the great argument that W.E.B. Du Bois had with Booker T. Washington.
Right.
W.E.B. Du Bois only wanted to deal with the talented 10% of black population. And Booker T wanted to deal with the other 90%. And he said that was more important because those were the tradesmen.
Yeah.
Those are the people who were the masons, the electricians, that had those specialties. And one of the things the school system moved away from also is having those kind of schools, because we know as educators that we have some kids are better with their hands. They may not. College is not for everybody. It's a good thing, but everybody can't go to everybody can't go to college. Everybody's not made to go to college.
I'm not even a major advocate for college, but the standard is not being met by these coaches, and I feel that signals to the kids that they can take shortcuts, right? Also, these coaches, they may go to high school, they may go to college for 1 year, and then whatever, it doesn't work out, and then they go back to the neighborhood and coach their local high school. To me, that's somebody who didn't finish the journey. Like, whatever adversity hit, whatever reason they ended up going off the team or not, they didn't fight through.
They didn't read the manual. Once again, when I was a kid, we had two great community coaches. You might have heard of Gil Reynolds.
Okay.
He coached Bernard King, Albert King, all those guys, Curtis Redding, Lester Roberts. Those guys were not high school graduates. Mm-hmm. They were community coaches. But their message was to their players, go to school, get an education.
For sure.
And they knew that they had a shortcoming because they're telling their kids to do something they didn't do. You know what those guys did? They went and got their GED diploma. Mm-hmm. They went on to junior college, got their associates, went and got their bachelor's degrees, and became college coaches. Mm-hmm. So that's what we need some of our guys to do.
Right.
Because oftentimes, we have a very good coach, very dedicated, community-oriented guy. He's responsible for winning the last 3 city championships at one of our local high schools. Mm-hmm. But he beats the category that you're talking about.
Right.
He's not a licensed teacher. He's not a teacher at all, doesn't have a degree.
Right.
But one of the things that he's doing that I think it takes away from his accomplishment, and in this day and time, it's so much easier to go to school and you could be in your own house. You don't have to actually physically be in the classroom. Right. You could do a Zoom or whatever. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were trying to push him towards in that direction, because officially you see city championship, you don't see his name anywhere.
Right.
He's not even as a coach. Someone who has the qualifications for as being certified teacher, who takes the courses, the phys ed courses, the first aid courses, in order for them to coach, and everything comes through them. And what happens, you'll go to the game, you might not know. You be at a game, you see this guy coaching, you say, well, how is he coaching? Well, the individual that actually has that license is right there, on the bench or somewhere, and you don't even know it.
There's a coach in this city. In fact, he's the reason I learned your name. I had the great Kenny Pretlow on this podcast, and you got to understand, Kenny is a legend to us. He won 8 city championships as an assistant at Abraham Lincoln. He went on to work as an assistant at Jeff. His very first year, they won a city championship. And then he's building his own program at Law and Tech, and they won a city championship, right? And Kenny P, I don't believe, is someone who is a certified teacher. His name is not on the website.
He's an enigma.
But his kids go to college. Mr. Haskins, we look at, you mentioned the school responsible for the last 3 championships. Their kids got to go to prep school. So it makes me wonder. I look at the two. The coach doesn't have the qualifications, and their kids are not going from our public schools into college. I wonder what role, and it makes me question, I wonder what role that lack of credentials plays in those kids having to go the prep school route.
Yeah, well, look at Kenny Pretlow. He's an enigma. He graduated from Brooklyn Tech.
Wow.
This guy gets up every morning and does the New York Times crossword puzzle. He's a very bright individual, and so many people have, why haven't you? For whatever reason, he works in the school system. He's a para, and he should be a teacher. There's nothing that's stopping him but him from being a teacher.
But also
Now,
with him, Mr. Haskins, he's an older gentleman. And that was a different time. Everybody didn't go to college back then. That was a different time. As you said, there was different trades and things. Today, if you're 42 years or younger, these are the standards. You need to match it if you're going to turn and develop our young kids.
I understand what you're saying, but I want you to look at this.
Yes, sir.
The guy at South Shore, he brings kids in. A lot of his kids transfer in, come from wherever. They're problem kids. They have trouble. They have bad grades coming in there. Mm-hmm. So he's recapturing them to the system because a lot of those kids would probably be in our pathways, multiple pathway schools, where they haven't done all the things that they needed to do, and then somebody has captured them like this coach has and said, yo, come to this school. Now, they're going a roundabout way to be successful, and we need people to recapture these kids. Your point is, there's too many of them. Mm-hmm. I always thought that you should have a blend. Mm-hmm. You should have kids who are great students, kids who are great kids, who want to be great students. You put them together, and they learn from each other. Mm-hmm. And, well, a lot of times that's not happening because oftentimes a lot of coaches, they don't go as deep. They don't pair kids up to friendships. One of my biggest disappointments, I had a kid by the name of Darnell Williams. He came to my school. I didn't recruit him. He tried out. I saw his talent. He made the team. West Point was recruiting him.
Military Academy.
And he didn't want to go to West Point because it was corny. He wound up going to Texas A&M, graduate from Texas A&M. But I was so disappointed because I said, Darnell, if you go to West Point, you know what that means? Mm-hmm. I had another kid, Nate Sims, who I mentioned his name earlier. He went to Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And he had that in-between size. He probably would have been a better football player than a basketball player. He could have been a pro basketball player. But he was a hard worker. And then he wound up, 4 years ago, he retired from the United States Army as a brigadier general.
Wow.
And they can't, those kids, they travel the same route.
Right. But
the biggest thing is catching them. And another thing, a lot of my kids who played high school basketball, they're still friends. Mm-hmm. I'm still in contact with Ice Reynolds, with Kerry Scary. Gerald Green, anytime he comes to New York, he comes by and see me.
But that's the question I asked you, Mr. Haskins. And we started this conversation talking about how you were concerned with not only the top 5 of your roster, but the bottom 5. And we say these kids are being recaptured because perhaps we see a few names in college basketball. But I'm worried about the people on the end of the bench. I see some of those names in trouble, in indictments. You know what I'm saying? I feel like too many of our kids are getting lost, and I got to look no further than the leadership.
Well, I guess that's one of the reasons why I was like, I went to Boys High.
Yes, sir. Kangaroos.
I went to Boys High. We won 68 straight games. I tried out for the team 3 straight years, and I never made the team. I got cut.
Wow.
But we had programs in the city. We had a night center league where I played against everybody. I played against those guys in high schools that were stars all over the city, and they used different names because at that time you couldn't play high school basketball and play outside basketball. And, I honed my skills against them, and I wound up I went to Shore University. I graduated from Boys High. I worked in the post office, and I was still playing in those leagues, and a guy by the name of Butch Niles, he says, man, why aren't you in school? I said, man, nobody got me in school. I wasn't. He said, you know what? I got a friend who just got a job at Shore University. I'm going to give him a call. So he called him up, and about 2 days later, I saw him. He said, man, I got good news and I got bad news. I said, well, what's the good news? He said, man, I got you a scholarship. I said, wow, man, well, what could be bad? He said, you got to be the manager. I said, I ain't going nowhere as no manager. He said, no, sure, trust me. Once he sees you play, you're going to be on the team. Yeah. I went down there to Shore University. Coach was supposed to meet me at the bus station. He didn't meet me. I took a cab to campus. Guys were in the gym. I went in the gym to find out who's Coach Mitchell. I said, well, this is Coach Mitchell. He says, who are you? I said, I'm Ray Haskins. He says, take these keys, go downstairs, get basketball so the guys could play. I got my bag, so I do that.
Of course.
I bring up the balls. I said, I got next. Then I go in the bathroom. Now I change my clothes. I come out. First game, after first game, no, you ain't got next. The second game, you ain't got next. So third game came up. All of Brooklyn came out. And I went and I grabbed the ball. I said, if I don't play, ain't no damn body playing. Then the guy in the background said, man, let him play. After 10 minutes, coach took my bag, got me a room, and I was no longer the manager.
There you go.
But because of the programs that we had in the city, because of the faith I had. Now, after my first year at Shore, I made the all-freshman team, all-tournament team, honorable mention all-conference. And Coach Howie Jones, great boys high coach, he won 5 championships at boys high. Coach Connie Hawkins, all those guys. And he would come to the tournament because he went to Virginia Union. And after we were eliminated from the tournament, I saw him outside my locker room, and hey, Mr. Jones, how you doing? He said, hey, that's how you feel. I said, I'm good. He said, man, I'm so proud of you, and I want to apologize to you.
Wow.
I said, apologize to me, Mr. Jones, for what? He said, man, there's no way in the world you could be as good as you are, and you shouldn't have been able to make my team.
Wow.
I said, thanks, Mr. Jones, but you still helped me. The mere fact that you cut me, was motivation enough because I didn't give up on myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what it is not to play high school ball, and I know how important it is to play high school ball.
Right.
So that's why a guy like, the comedian Brooklyn Mike?
Brooklyn Mike? No, I'm not familiar
He's a world famous comedian, very popular. He writes for Chris Rock, he writes all that. He went to Alexander Hamilton, and he wanted to come out for the team. He's a freshman. So I told him, I would tell my kids, listen, if you being my manager for 2 years, freshman, sophomore, I'm going to give you a uniform. You're going to be on team junior, senior year. Mm-hmm. So Brooklyn Mike bought into that. Became a pretty decent player, not a star player, but he became a world-famous comedian. Mm-hmm. He Shore University graduate, college graduate, because he went to college, the whole 9 yards, all because of that experience. Yeah. So, and that's what we need. We need people that reach back. We need people that understand. And, as a principal, one of the biggest things I used to tell my teachers was, you got to tell your story to our kids to let them know who you are.
Yes.
They look at you, they think that you're from Long Island, from Westchester, somewhere else. Yeah. They don't know you from the projects.
Yeah.
You're from the projects. Mm-hmm. So let them know. Because when they know your story, they can see that it's a way for them. Oh, you came from a project?
Yes, sir.
You went here? If you could do it, I could do it.
Mr. Haskins, that's what we try to do here at WBH Radio. Tell the stories of our people. Executive Director of the PSAL. What's the job description of the Executive Director?
Well, the Executive Director basically controls the direction, makes decisions on what should happen, what shouldn't happen. Now, we come from a city that's rich in alumni, people who came through. And one of the things we lost, this is what my mission is, one of the things we lost was our connection to our history. As a kid, I used to know who they were without even actually physically seeing them, because I heard so many stories about their names. So because of who I am and because of how I travel, I have guys like Albert King, who was one of the National Players of the Year, played in the NBA. Vinnie Johnson, who they call the microwave, played for Detroit Pistons.
Yes.
Those guys, they reach back and they communicate with me.
Vinnie Johnson played in the PSAL?
Vinnie Johnson played for FDR.
Wow.
Played for Baylor. He was a microwave. He was a sixth man on
Bad Boy Pistons. Yeah, I'm familiar.
Yeah. A lot of kids don't know that we have guys from the NBA. They come from New York. They come from Brooklyn.
They don't know that.
They don't know that. But know why? Because we don't tell the stories. And a lot of people want to blame our kids for not knowing. Don't blame the kids. We got the stories. We got to tell them.
We got to tell them.
Dude, it's because of us. Oh, they say, oh, these kids ain't like they used to be. I said, no, we not like we used to be.
If we talking about history, let me tell you this story, Mr. Haskins. I already mentioned I had the great Kenny Pretlow here on the podcast. You know, I was so excited. Again, he's a legend amongst like our generation. My peers always talk about him. He was an 8-time city champion as an assistant coach at Lincoln, city champion at Long Tech, city champion at Thomas Jefferson. And he's sitting there, he's telling these amazing stories. And he said, you know somebody I used to like to watch coach? I'm sitting there with bated breath. Like, Kenny P's the legend. Who does he consider the OG? He said, Ray Haskins. That was the first time I heard that name. But if I got a legend in front of me telling me this is somebody that he looked up to and revered and studied, I need to learn who Ray Haskins is. And earlier this year, I saw you at a game and I introduced myself, Mr. Ray Haskins. My name is William Holly. I heard a lot about you. You know, I'm paying attention. I'm dialed in. And in fact, you talk about connecting with our history. You were sitting next to Ray for Austin, Skip to Malu.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Who played at Cardozo, right? Mm-hmm. Went on to the NBA and everything. So you mentioned history is important. We got to tell those stories.
And when Skip came to the gym, he saw me and he gravitated towards me.
That's what's up.
See, because why? Because of basketball, we're family. Mm-hmm. We're family. That's so important. I guess Kenny never corrected you. He won a couple of championships at Bishop Loughlin, too.
Oh, yeah.
So he went from Loughlin to Lincoln, you know.
That was the first time I ever heard someone say, I enjoyed watching someone coach. He said he loved to see you communicate with your team. He loved to see your command of the game, your presence on the sideline. Mr. Haskins, why would he say those things about you?
Well, I appreciate the compliments, you know. So, and hey, that's what if when I leave here, and I could have coaches, athletes, educators say that I was a great example of how things should be and how things were better because of, and you know, that's my obituary right there.
There you go. I think he was referring to your time when you coached LIU. He said he would go to the game and just watch you. How did that opportunity come about? You were a PSAL coach, high school coach in the city, and here you get a Division I opportunity right here in Brooklyn.
Well, all these connections. You know, Stephen A. Smith was a high school beat writer for the Daily News in New York City. Mm-hmm. And when he came to New York, he asked people, well, who's this, who's that? They said, man, the best coach is not coaching. He closed the school down. His name was Ray Haskins. So he sought me out, and he did an expose in the Daily News, this Sunday edition, on me to, you know, exfoliate all my accomplishments.
So you were working at PSAL, your school got closed down, and then you were kind of without a job. Stephen A. Smith comes and said, who's the guy? Everybody said Ray Haskins, and he writes this expose.
And then we had Hank Carter from Wheelchair Class. You know Hank Carter?
No, sir.
That's the guy you got to interview.
Okay.
Hank Carter raised over $40 million for handicap, get wheelchairs. Now, I'm going to show you kind of job that Hank Carter did. In order to get a street or building or something named after you, you got to die, right?
Yes, sir, unfortunately.
Well, the Henry Carter Hospital on 124th and Park Avenue in Manhattan, Hank Carter goes in that building every day. He's still living. And they named that building after him.
Yeah.
That's the kind of work that he's doing.
Yeah, that might be somebody we need to talk to.
Yep. So the Wheelchair Classic, that used to be a basketball tournament.
Right.
That was one of the top 3 tournaments in the nation, where it was a must-see when you recruited. And at one point, it was at its apex, where we had wheelchair games with NBA players at the Garden. I think we had that for 3 years.
Wow.
So
Stephen A. writes the expose. You were talking about the opportunity to get to LIU.
It helped because it reminded people who I was. And LIU, they didn't have any black coaches on staff. So they reached out to me, and I came on staff because I was the athletic director at Boys and Girls High School.
Okay.
And I went on staff, and then I became an assistant coach.
What year is this?
1995.
Okay.
And then the following year, I became the head coach.
Wow.
So one of the things, I'm waiting to speak to Rod Strickland now.
Shows the importance of black media. Mm-hmm. You know, Stephen A. Smith said, "Yo, who's the guy?" And they said Ray Haskins. So he pens this expose, and then boom, you back on the map.
And Stephen A. Smith was nobody at that time.
That's a Shaw graduate, also Shaw University.
No, Winston-Salem.
Oh,
Winston-Salem. Earl Monroe, Winston-Salem. Big House Games.
Yes. My apologies. Yeah. So LIU.
No, you know who was a Shaw University graduate? Ella Baker. She was the forefront. She was the architect of the civil rights movement in this country. And Willie Gary.
Okay.
Willie Gary, to tell you who he is, you might not know he's a lawyer. But about maybe 20 years ago, Willie Gary donated $20 million to Shaw University.
Wow.
So to show you what kind of guy. Now they're doing a Willie Gary, they're doing a story of his life. And you know who's playing Willie Gary?
Denzel?
No, Jamie Foxx.
Oh.
So you know that's
big time.
Yeah.
That's big time.
Jamie Foxx. So but you know those kind of stories, that kind of history, and everywhere I went, someone has helped me. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't smile a lot, so people a lot of times they take that the wrong way.
Right.
But I care a lot.
There you go.
You know, so
there you go. Mr. Haskins, first year at LIU, your team went 9-19.
9-19. I think we went 14-15.
Okay, that's what I have found on the website.
Really?
And then the very next year, you went 21-19 and was the 21-9, excuse me, and you were the regular season champion, and then you went on to win the conference tournament.
Mm-hmm. And every year at LIU, from 1996, 97, 98, we led the nation in scoring, and we had the nation's leading scorer,
Charles Jones.
One of the things I noticed, the first glaring thing I noticed that was missing from the LIU team was no players were from Brooklyn. We got the best.
Yes, sir.
You could take all of New York City, Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island, put them together, and Brooklyn still produced more NBA players than all of them combined.
Wow. Mr. Haskins, what was the biggest reason for the turnaround? Because I got so many young coaches out there that's looking to build programs. You were a sub-500 team in year one, and then the very next season, you're a conference champion. How do you do that?
I had Brooklyn kids, New York City kids, and when I left LIU, one of my players, Isaiah Francis, he came up, he said, "Man, Coach, we really miss you." I said, "Your guy's going to be all right." He says, "No, Coach, we really miss you." I said, "Well, what's the deal?" He said, "Listen, no matter who we play, we went to win." Mm-hmm. Says, we go to a campus, and a coach said, "Let's keep it close. Let's not lose by more than 20.
Wow.
Well, when you went, we went to win.
Indeed.
I mean, we went to win. I mean, 50 years. LIU used to be a power. With a guy by the name of Sherman White. He was the best player in the country when he was at LIU. And when we went to play St. John's University, we hadn't beaten them in 50 years. A lot of people on the campus, "Oh, why'd you schedule St. John's? Why'd you do this? They're going to embarrass us. It's one thing losing somebody somewhere else." I said, "We don't schedule games to lose. We schedule them to win." So before the game, you know, I've known the St. John's staff. Fran Ficella, he was a kid in high school at Madison. So he came up through the ranks. He was a coach. So we were messing around with him, and Ron Rutledge, who went to Clinton, and them before the game, you know, coaches, we mess around and say, "Oh, yeah, what y'all got? Y'all ain't got nothing for us. Y'all ain't got nothing for us." Said, "We got 12 McDonald's All-Americans." That's what they said to me.
Yeah.
I looked at him and I laughed. He said, yeah. I said, well, we got 12 kids that eat at McDonald's, and y'all look like a Happy Meal to us.
Wow. I like
And
that
we
one.
beat them
I
at
like
St. John's.
You beat them. When I think of taking over a job of that magnitude, there's so many different things. Like, what would you say was your first order of business? Like, your must-have. This must be in place. This is a staple of a Ray Haskins coached team.
Well, I had to make an assessment. We didn't have anybody who could do anything in the paint. So we had to stretch the court. I had to get kids that could stretch the court where we make them play the whole 95 feet. So we pressed because we couldn't out-rebound teams.
Right.
But if we can't out-rebound them, how you get the ball? You take it away. We led the nation in steals. We led the nation in scoring. So at no time did we not put full court pressure. We just played different. Now, if I was a boxer and I was stylish and I could throw the jab and move and whatnot, what sense would it make for me to fight Mike Tyson going punch for punch? We didn't play their style. We made everybody play like we wanted to play. And that was the key to a lot of our victories. A lot of coaches, they couldn't coach up to that particular level. They couldn't make those kind of adjustments. Not only did we press at a made free throw, we pressed at the missed free throw. So it was constant pressure.
Constant pressure.
Kids were in great shape.
Constant pressure. You led the nation in scoring. You had the nation's leading scorer, the great Charles Jones.
Yes.
You know, his career is legend. What's your favorite Charles Jones performance?
When we played in NIT, we played at Dayton. Charles was the nation leading scorer. And we went in the half. We were down by 11. Charles had 8 points. And the student body at Dayton was singing, "Overrated, overrated." Come out the second half. Charles finished that game. We lost in triple overtime by 1. Charles finished that game with 48 points.
Wow.
Scored 40 points in the second half.
Yeah. That's amazing.
And as he's going off the court, the kids, college kids are great. They were bowing to him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They'll give you your credit. They'll give you your credit. If you perform, they'll give you your credit on the road. Mr. Haskins, but Charles Jones, nation's leading scorer 2 years in a row. For those who understand college basketball, Duke, UCLA, everybody, Charles Jones was the leading scorer in the nation from LIU Brooklyn. I think every coach would say, yo, I need somebody to go get a bucket like Charles Jones. I want a killer. But many of them may actually stifle a player like Charles Jones. How do you think you helped him to be the prolific scorer that he is? Because, again, you said your team led the nation in scoring, and even at Alexander Hamilton in high school, your teams would score 100 points in an era with no shot clock. What role did you play in helping Mr. Jones to be so prolific?
We played an up-tempo, and one of the things when Charles played at Rutgers, because he played 2 years at Rutgers before he came to LIU, he averaged like 6 points a game.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of coaches can't teach fast break basketball. They can't teach pressure basketball. So one of the ways you control a game is you walk the ball up court, you take time off the clock. So if you don't have, if teams are holding the ball for, and don't shoot until it's 4 or 5 seconds on the clock, and they get a rebound, they throw it back out, they do that. We didn't do that. We wanted to put it up. I mean, one time we had a game, Charles came by the bench, coach, what offense to run? I said, MF, run the offense where you shoot the ball.
That's great, Coach.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's what I want to ask you. Like, what are the challenges of coaching somebody like that? You got to live with some bad shots.
Well, if it's an open shot, we had a nice mixture. We had a lot of players on the team who may have been slow, but they could shoot when they were open. But they couldn't. They didn't have the ability like Charles to shoot when they're closely guarded or shoot off a move if they're open. So I had a rule. If you open, shoot. I don't care how far you're from the basket. Now, I've had people come up to me from anywhere I'm at, all over the country, saying, man, the NBA owe you a lot of money. I said, NBA owe me money for what? He said, man, those guys are playing your style. You the first coach we saw let big shoot like that. Yeah. Now, I had one time a guy by the name of Wally Briggs, really great player from Boys Eye, North Carolina A&T. He came to see us play at LIU, and he said, man, that kid took a shot from the jungle. And I jumped up, I looked at you, and you were just sitting there like nothing. So I know it must have been all right. And he made it. So basketball is about the open shot, the open man. If you open, shoot. We had a saying, shooters won the war.
Anybody could take a shot? Like
no. Anybody couldn't take a shot. You knew where you could take your shots from.
What about maybe jealousy from teammates? Was that an issue?
We scored too many points to be jealous.
Gotcha.
So the ball was going around. If you was open, you shot.
You shot it. Why did your career at LIU end?
One of the things happened at LIU was that we became the team of the city. Mm-hmm. When we made the NCAA tournament, we were the only ones in the whole state to make the tournament. Mm-hmm. And you go to LIU games, commuter school, more people were from New York City and Brooklyn in the gym than was from LIU. So the people that was from LIU who were there, nobody knew who they was. Right. Everybody there knew who Ray Haskins was because they came from our communities. We had politicians. I mean, we had, God bless his soul, just passed, Al Van was there, Ed Towns, Congressman, Chuck Schumer. Okay. He was there. Those are all basketball guys. They came to see this phenomenon was going on at LIU. Yeah. So they came from all over. So it was like a little bit resentment. And one of the things I always told my kids, going back to the education, I said, listen, if I lose this job today, tomorrow I'll be at the Board of Ed. I'll be an AP or a principal somewhere. Mm-hmm. That's the value of having a degree. I said, everybody can't play in the NBA, but you could play somewhere. And one of the things that give you bargaining power is your degree. Mm-hmm. If you go overseas and they know you don't have a degree, they know you over there for basketball, you don't have no other alternative. But if you go over there and you have a degree, that tells a story about you. Wow. So get the degree and then move on.
You stepped away from the Board of Ed for 3 years during that period, right?
Yes.
Had you stayed longer with LIU, you would have lost your DOE tenure?
No.
No?
No. I had a great principal by the name of Steve Gilbert. He signed my leave of absence every year.
Okay.
So this is the thing about the timing. It's bad timing. I would have been the coach at St. John's University if I would have been there 2 more weeks. Mike Jarvis would have never been the coach of St. John's. Ray Haskins would have been the coach of St. John's. Because every Monday, the New York Metropolitan Writers, so at Madison Square Garden, we have a luncheon, and the coaches go to the luncheon. No matter where I sat in that luncheon, the AD at St. John sat next to me. And he was always telling me, he said, Coach, you got the formula. You keep New York kids here. I had New York kids. Yes, sir. I had kids from nowhere. You could keep them home. And that's what we want. That's what we need.
How did Mike Jarvis come into play? Why did you not get the St. John's job?
Because I got fired at LIU.
Right.
I didn't leave LIU. They asked me to leave.
Right. And by that time, they had already hired Mike Jarvis?
No. Okay. They were in the process of getting ready to hire me. Right. So now, when I get fired, you got people in the athletic department say, oh, he's a bad guy. Yeah. We may have as many as 30 NCAA. Who's going to hire you on that? Yeah. I mean, I've done interviews, get ready to get a job, and then somebody, off the record would say, oh, that guy, we may have violations of that. No violations, no nothing. But what purpose did it serve? Serve the purpose of not like a lot of people be surprised. How did Ray Haskins get the LIU job? How did Ray Haskins get that principal job? How did Ray Haskins become the executive director of the PSAL? Ray Haskins put the work in.
Put the work in.
He put the position himself.
How close were you to getting another Division I job? Or what other program did you interview for?
I interviewed at Norfolk State. I interviewed at North Carolina A&T.
Which D3 program did you coach?
Pratt. I was assistant coach at Pratt.
Okay. All right, Mr. Haskins. Let's get down to the get down. I heard a rumor the other day that the public schools athletic league was going to realign its basketball division. You know, a lot of different rumors going around, people talking. I said, you know what? I got Mr. Haskins' number on my phone. Let me call him. So I called you. I said, Mr. Haskins, I hear that the PSAL is thinking of realigning its basketball division. You said, yep. It's confirmed. I said, Mr. Haskins, how would you feel about coming on the podcast and discussing it? You said, William, not a problem. So, Mr. Haskins, my understanding with the realignment, the PSAL as we know it has 3 divisions, AA, A, and the B division. But with this new realignment, it's going just to an A division and a B division. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What else would you like the people to know about this realignment?
With the realignment, that stops a lot of student athletes because they weren't AA. They want to play AA, and that was a recruiting carrot. Oh, you're not doing this. You're not playing the A, this, that, and the other. And oftentimes, it's been my experience, guys would transfer into a program, and they were great where they were at, but they transfer in the program and they just sit on the bench. They don't play.
Okay, Mr. Let's talk about a little bit of the details, like the specifics. The current AA schools, they're just going to all go to the A division.
Right.
Are there any A schools that will be knocked down to the B division?
No.
Okay.
And when we play the PSAL championship game, the winner of the A division will represent New York City in the AA in the state, and the loser will represent New York City in the A. That's what the Catholic schools do.
Wow.
Catholic schools do a lot of things a lot better than us.
Okay.
At the end of the season, they have team camps where coaches come from all over the country in a live period to see them. Right. Well, after the season, we're going to have team camps. Am I embarrassed to say that we are copying? No. The Catholic schools? No. I'm happy to say that they have experimented, and their experiment was success. Because success, and we didn't think of it first, we shouldn't do it. No. Whatever's going to help us, we're going to do a lot of things different.
So in 2023, at the end of the season, there's going to be team camps where high schools will compete and college coaches can come recruit?
College coaches come through. It'll be a live period where we invite them.
And that's going to be ran by the PSAL?
Yes. Catholic schools do it.
How many schools do you anticipate being a part of that?
We're still working on the numbers.
Okay.
All right, but those kind of things, and this is what we're going to go back to. We're going to have all borough teams, PSA all borough, A and B. We're going to have coach of the year in all the boroughs. We're going to recognize the kids. We're going to recognize the scholar athlete, the scholar teams of the year. All that recognition we're going to put back. We're going to build.
We want to elevate. We want to elevate the league with the realignment. Who all helped to make this decision?
Well, my basketball czar is the great Dwayne Morton,
Tiny Morton,
past coach of Lincoln, who's won more championships than any other high school coach in New York City.
When did you guys start working on this decision, this plan?
We have casual talks. You know, I've spoken to people about it. I spoke to Kenny Pretlow, and spoke to Ruth Lovelace, and this before I became.
Okay.
What my vision was. And I also had conversation with Mo Hicks. You know Mo Hicks?
I've heard the name recently.
Mo Hicks was the coach of Rice High School. He had Felipe, and he has
Felipe Lopez, former St. John standout.
yeah, what's the guy? Kemba Walker.
Okay.
Had all those guys at Rice. And Maurice Hicks is the only coach that I know of in the history of New York City basketball that won a PSL championship at Brandeis High School and won city championships at Rice High School, Catholic and public. And he's won something like 4 state championships.
Mr. Haskins, allow me to provide some pushback. Many people will say those AA teams that were competing at that level now being bumped into the A, they're going to demolish the competition. There's going to be slaughters. It's going to be unfair and imbalanced. To that, the PSAL says what?
I don't think so. What happened before? We had AA. All those teams played in the A,
Right.
in the B. So what happened before? Who demolished what?
And Mr. Haskins, that was the reason for the creation of the AA division, no?
No. The creation of the AA is because we were out of alignment with the state, where we only sent 2 teams to the state championships because we only had an A and a B.
Instead of sending 3.
We didn't send 3. The rest of the state sent 4.
Hold on, Mr. Haskins. Mr. Haskins. We were watching Through the Fire, and we were watching Sebastian Telfair rip up teams like New Utrecht and different schools, and we believed, as fans, that's why the city said we need a AA division for these kind of juggernauts to put them all together.
This is what we need. We need better coaches.
Okay.
Right? Going back to John Thompson. We had a lot of long talks. I'm talking to him, complaining about this and that, and this and that. He said, Coach, you finished? I said, yeah. He said, you know what? If you want to win, if you want your program to be better, then you'll be a better coach. You got to coach better. That's all. Our coaches got to coach better. And how are we going to help that? In New York City, every week, a coach is just another name for a teacher, educator. Mm-hmm. Every week, we have staff development for English, math, phys ed, all our teachers. Well, why can't we develop the coaches? Why can't they have staff development? You know, why they whatever they go in, they come out with? Mm-hmm. Nothing new, no change. So
let me say this to you, Mr. Haskins. I had a young man. Well, let's go back to the pandemic year. Late 2021, the PSAL allows us to play a 6-game schedule, right? And I say us because I'm an assistant coach at Wingate High School, and at that time I was an assistant at John Dewey. Because of the pandemic, PSAL, city didn't want us traveling too much, so schools played their local competition. There was a young man, he was actually a guest on the show, he's a great young man, a talented ball player. He scored 75 points, and then he scored 90 points, and then he scored 90 again.
That was horrible.
But, Mr. Haskins, one would say, had he been playing AA competition, we're not sure if he would have been able to do that. He was able to pull that off because he was playing against inferior schools that just happened to be local. And without a AA division, this is what much of the city's basketball may look like.
No, that was, to me, that was poor coaching. He came from a program where they had a whole lot of good players.
Yes, sir.
So how is he going to score all those points? What are the other players doing? And then that same individual you talking about, he got a Division I scholarship and had the red shirt that year. Well, if he was that good, he should have been able to go in college and do some of the same things. He should have been a one and done guy, right?
Right.
So I mean that to me that was a crime against the team, a crime against basketball.
Now, Mr. Haskins, would you agree that the AA division, having the best kids play against the best kids, helped to sharpen them, and they may lose out on that?
No. All that's going to do is rise the other kids. One of the things you notice, about kids, once again, they're all transferring to AA.
That
So
is
they're
true.
leaving their teams. So they transfer to AA. You go only five guys could be on the court.
Yeah.
So what happens? What happened to those kids who were really good players and they were tremendous players at the school they were at?
Yeah.
But they left 30 minutes of play for 10 minutes of play.
This is very true.
And
I agree with you there, Mr. Haskins. There's like you said, that was a recruiting carrot for the AA schools. Like some of those coaches may not even be the greatest, but if I'm a kid and I got some pride in myself and I want to win the city championship, well, it's only these 6 schools that I got a shot. You know what I'm saying? So that recruiting carrot is now removed for those coaches, and they got to come out here and work now.
that's right.
Now, I will say, Mr. Haskins, I mentioned that I saw you earlier with Skip to My Lou earlier in the year. That was at City College, where the A Division championship was taking place. It was between Transit Tech and Murray Bertram. A great game, right? 2 tough teams. Transit Tech was ranked number 1 in the state in the A Division. Now with just 2 divisions, teams like that won't have that stage. You know, one could say that the city is now cannibalizing some of its own teams.
Well, prior to AA, Transit Tech was a good A school. Year in and year out. Automotive was a good A school. Year in and year out. So I just think that at the end of the day, our kids will be better for having an A. I think we oftentimes stress everybody going to the Apollo. You know, there's other roads to being a great entertainer without going to the Apollo. So I think it's basically gonna work for us. And you want to know the thing that happened prior to this? These coaches don't even talk to each other. They don't communicate to each other. But because of the change, now they talking.
Yeah.
Now they talking. They got an opinion about something, and we want to hear. Can this be wrong? It could be wrong, but it can't be said that we didn't try something different.
For sure. Mr. Haskins, you personally, what was your biggest reservations about the realignment?
None.
Yeah.
I didn't have any. I didn't have any. I just think that the amount of games that happens, no one's going to have more than 14 league games.
Okay.
So that means that each team can play 10 non-league games. So this is one of the things that hurts basketball in New York City. Some schools, like the smaller schools, some of the smaller A schools, some of the smaller B schools, they only play the games that the PSL pay for. They don't play non-league games.
Okay.
And that shouldn't be. You could play 24 games. Another component that what we're going to do with the so-called AA teams, we're going to have matchups where a AA, we're going to have a day where these games are exempt from their 24 games, where they come and play a showcase. So, but we'll be better for it, and it's going to be, coaches. If you're a real coach, everything should be teaching. If I see that my team is good at this and not good at that, and because we're good at this and we're playing against a lesser opponent, well, why not try this? Why not,
Mr. Haskins, why implement this right away? Why not give schools, teams, coaches a heads up? Hey, in 2 years, we're going to do this. In 1 year, we're going to do this.
Well, we're going to do it. So what's the difference in 1 year, 2 years? We're in New York City. We're in the basketball capital of the world.
Yes.
All right, we got players all over. To me, I look at all the kids in the city. One of the best players in the city is the Aubrey kid at Transit Tech.
Ashton Reynolds, salute, young man.
Yeah. He's amazing.
He is. But I seen kids this summer transfer to AA schools because they wanted to play AA basketball.
See?
I seen families do it. So now that move is kind of in vain.
Yes, it is. Yes, transfer back.
Something-
that's it's not that it's we got a better coach. No, it's just that they winning.
They want to go compete for the
You know,
championship.
you could join the winner, you could be a winner.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking to my people about this. And I wonder is it kind of like a regional bias for us? Because again, we're in Brooklyn. It's the South Shores, it's the Canarsies, it's the Bedfords, it's the Boys and Girls High School. Does this move maybe impact that area a little bit more than the rest of the city?
Well,
Because the champions come out of this specific group a lot of the time, Brooklyn.
always.
Yeah.
It's always been like
Lincoln's,
this.
Jeff's, Boys High. Like in Queens, the realignment may not be as big in Manhattan and the Bronx. Is it possible that Brooklyn?
But let's be truthful. We're the 4th largest city in America.
Yes, sir.
So, and if we're the basketball capital of the world, and we're the 4th largest city, then we should have more players in Brooklyn than any other borough.
Okay.
And a lot of those teams, if you really look and you research, you see players that come from Brooklyn on those teams. When Bobby Hurley was at his best at St. Anthony's in Jersey City, he had 2 kids that lived right across the street from Boys and Girls High School, get on train every day to go to St. Anthony's.
Yeah.
You know, come on, we want to keep the kids home. We want to develop. A lot of times, yeah, it's rough. You move into another neighborhood, you move into a better apartment, you buy a bigger house, it costs more, but you make the adjustments. And our kids are gonna make the adjustments. Our coaches are gonna make the adjustments. One of the things that I want coaches to be able to do is pick up the phone, call. We're gonna have buddy coaches. Call. If you want to know how to do something, or if you're not doing something you're having a problem with this, that, and the other, call.
What's a buddy coach?
Buddy coach? You got coaches who lack experience. How do you my buddy coach?
You're gonna pair coaches with different people?
Yeah, I want them to be friends.
Like a mentor program?
A mentor, yeah. You can't tell me that your coach is not happy to be in A division with all A. If you have that competitive edge,
Yeah.
I mean, Wingate was the double A. Wingate was one of the best programs in the city, in the history of the city of New York.
But I will say this, Mr. Haskins, and this one I asked about the timing. If we're recruiting, had we had advance notice and the kids and their families known, then they could have been like, all right,
Well,
I'm going to go to Wingate. We're going to play against everybody.
You're not recruiting. Recruiting is illegal.
Yeah, it's illegal. I'm sorry. But for the next few years, it may be rough. Because the juggernauts they loaded already.
But
Is that fair?
It could be fair. But I saw your team play. I saw Wingate play.
Yes, sir.
And I think they're going to be all right. You're going to make adjustments. Guys are going to learn. Listen, I had a team. I had 25 players. I had 14 Division I players on my team. Not all in the same age category.
Right.
So I had Ed Downer, Gerald Green. They were unseasoned players with a lot of talent and got killed in practice every day against Beetle Washington, Andre Irvin, those kids. They had to play against them every day. Right. But you know what happens? It comes a point where they learn how to play against they raise their game.
Yes, sir.
So let's raise our game. Let's raise our talent. We're gonna be all right.
Do you guys have the divisions set up already?
Matter of fact, when I leave here, myself, Coach Morton, Coach Allen, we're gonna finalize that.
Will it be based off of demographic, or are you guys considering, hey, Thomas Jefferson has AA talent, let's maybe give him a little...
We got two AAs in each division. We got about 4 or 5 divisions in Brooklyn.
Okay.
We got 2 AAs in each of those. And we try to do it by neighborhood. We try to group you by your area so we could build up those rivalries. And let's think about this. This is what we have to do with sports in this city where we're dying. We don't have the culture in our schools that we should have. We don't have the student body. The students don't come out. The teachers don't come out. We want that kind of program. We don't want just to have a team. We want to have a program where everybody's involved, because really, athletics are not just about the kids on the floor. They're about the kids in the stands, about the cheerleaders, about the teachers, the whole community coming together. So we want to bring that kind of culture back to sports in New York City.
Now, with the divisions A and B, moving forward, how do we determine? What would be the process if a B school wants to move up to the A? Like, what do you guys consider? Is it student body? Like, how do we decide which is A and B now?
It can be student body, but it all comes with the coach.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches want to move up. If they can get their principal to agree, then of course we'll move you up.
And you said there's no A schools that will get their schedule 2022, 23 and be bounced down to the B.
No.
Without notification. Okay. Oh, give me a second. Let me make sure I got it all.
Wingate is an A school, right?
Yes, sir. Mr. Haskins, when I first heard it, I generally had no opinion. I said, let's listen, because there's some smart people up there, Mr. Ray Haskins, Tiny Moore, making decisions. And honestly, now that I hear everything, I understand. You know?
So, just coming on this show, you know what? I wanted to try to work something out with you where we could bring student athletes here.
Let's do it.
And be a part, because we need to hear what our young people have to say.
Yes, sir.
You know, and these kind of experiences can only make them better.
I'm trying.
So
let's do it.
I'm gonna get you to be a part of what we're doing. We need this kind of exposure.
For sure. I've had some PSAL stars on. The great Femi Odekale. I had Jaquan Carlos. I have another PSAL standout coming up. I didn't even release that yet. Sekou Silla, who started at South Shore. He's now going to Towson. He was the D2 National Player of the Year actually this past year at Nova Southeastern. So we welcome that. In fact, that's something I want to ask you about. The PSAL is perhaps the biggest public school league in the country?
It is, and the first started in 1903.
What's next? I feel like so much more can be done. Like even in media, there was a show, Mike Quick. You remember Mike Quick, High School Weekly?
I remember Mike Quick very well. I knew Mike Quick.
How can we put something together like that for the PSL?
Well, that's a conversation.
Let's do it. What else? You talked about the team camp. What else can be done with this great league, the biggest league? Somebody told me that the PSCL is the only public school league in the country that has a cricket division.
We have cricket because we have a large Caribbean population. And also, I want people to understand what we're doing for the guys, we're doing for the girls too.
Yes, I forgot. Yes.
So
yes.
they're doing it. So I want to get Brenda Morgan to come on this program because she's our sports coordinator in charge of basketball, and she does a tremendous job. Mm-hmm. You know, she recruited me to the PSAL as the basketball commissioner last year for Brooklyn.
Okay.
So we need to get we need to get people involved, like Tiny Morton. I mean, we can't have that guy out of coaching all this time before all he's done.
What is Tiny Morton's role with the PSAL?
He's the basketball czar.
The basketball czar.
Yeah.
That's just a position for him.
That's a position. Because that's who he is.
Yeah.
And that name, that title just pays homage to some of the accomplishments. He's a great mind. When I told you I was a mentor, I mentored his principal at his school out in Coney Island. He's working in a K-8 school. Mm-hmm. And him and his principal wasn't getting along too well. Wow. And I'm mentoring her, the principal, and she has attitude because he has attitude. So she tells me, she says, I'm going to rate him a U. So I said, let me go see how she thinks she's going to rate him a U. I'm going to go in this classroom. I went in this class with a math teacher. This guy is a great basketball coach, but he's a better math teacher than he is even a basketball coach. And you know what he's accomplished in basketball.
Yeah.
So I said, how you going to rate this guy?
Yeah.
I said, we got to meet, man. We got to tear down these barriers, because he got this wall up, she got this wall up. So we broke the walls down. We sat down. We talked. Now they the best of friends.
There you go. Isn't it? It's kind of funny that Tiny is now the basketball czar at the PSAL. Wasn't he like a marked man for years? Like the PSAL wanted to investigate him. He was on the cover of newspapers. Get Tiny. Isn't it just?
So was I. So was I.
And to Tiny's credit, never found guilty of anything. Salute to the great Tiny Morton.
Yeah.
We actually saw Tiny working with South Shore this past season.
Mm-hmm.
Like his name was up on a website as a coach.
Yeah.
What was that about?
I don't really know the inner workers. I don't know what happened with that, but I know whatever happened, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. So we got to get him. We got to get him as a guest. He has he's very interesting.
Tiny ain't coming in here to give it up.
When I leave here, I'm gonna be with Tiny, and I'm gonna call you.
There you go.
All right, I'm gonna call you. So
There
keep your phone lines open.
Mr. Haskins, you replaced the man. Well, they didn't replace the man. You hold a position that was once held by a gentleman by the name of Donald Douglas, who served in the PSL for years. He retired and unfortunately passed shortly after. Did you know Donald Douglas?
I know him as a kid. He played at Bushwick when I was coaching at Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, one of his best friends was a guy by the name of Israel Cameron. Mm-hmm. They were best friends. They grew up in the Bushwick community together. Bob. He was a decent player, high jumping guy.
What do you think, or would you like people to know? Like, what was his PSAL legacy?
Oh, very, very dedicated, regimented person. I think he gave a lot to the PSL. I think he gave his life to the PSL.
Yeah.
I think it was great that they named the championship trophy in his name. So, he put a lot of years in. Tommy Hemus put a lot of years in. John Gladding, Jack Kriesman, all those guys, they put a lot of good time in. So,
Mr. Haskins, did we miss anything? Anything you want the people to know?
Well, I just want anybody, if you have any questions, if you want to know anything, don't ask me,
Yeah.
Send me an email. I'll get back to you. I answer all questions, whether they're good or bad.
For sure. I put in the call and you answered. I asked you to pull up and you're here and you answered the questions that I had for you. You've put in so much work in the city, all college levels, in the classroom, mentoring, principals. Like, you've done it all. And we greatly appreciate you. I appreciate you for sure for showing up.
Have you seen the documentary Ball Side Middle?
No, sir.
You got to see that, Brooklyn Basketball Ball Side Middle.
Okay.
Tubu. Right. You would enjoy that.
I'm on it. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Ray Haskins. I am William Holly, WBH Radio. We out.